This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Have you ever seen a building and thought, that's a weird building? Or even, what were they thinking? Well, then you're not alone. It almost seems as if a race has been going on between architects to see who could make the strangest building. They don't always seem to be liked, or even very practical, and they don't look cheap to make either. So what is driving architects to design them like that? It has everything to do with one ideal that has risen to supreme importance: originality. But what does originality mean and why is it so significant? And more importantly, is pursuing novelty and originality in architecture really more important than other things like harmony and beauty? In this video, I'll tell a story of how innovating became so important in architecture that it started trumping other aspects. We will discover when it's useful and when it's just, well, a bit crazy. Finally, we'll discuss many new ways of how to look at originality to make sure that we can keep innovating without destroying what's already there. So let's dive right in. From a young age, we are taught not to copy others, but to come up with our own ideas. Because that's what originality is, to do something unique that hasn't been done before. In a way, you could see it as innovation as well, so I will use those interchangeably sometimes. It's different from authenticity, which has less to do with novelty and more with being genuine. Original ideas have led to great innovations and wonderful pieces of architecture, but sometimes also to some less successful buildings. To find out why originality is so useful and so valued, let's look at where original ideas really shine, in science and technology. Architecture is partly a technology. It deals with building techniques, methods and building materials. And being original is super useful when it comes to science. Without original ideas fueling innovation, we wouldn't have had modern medicine, heating, sanitation or even space internet. And our lives would be less comfortable, safe and healthy. But sometimes these original ideas lead to technology that is either destructive or that has unintended negative consequences. Original ideas and innovation are in great part responsible for what the cities of today look like, with its skyscrapers and suburbs. But although many of these modern inventions do seem to solve problems at surface level, many of them also introduce new problems. As we all know, suburbs lead to car dependency and enormous energy usage, and skyscrapers to wind, shadow and social isolation. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what trouble innovations can cause, like we will discover in the rest of this video. The internet is another example of a technology that has upsides and downsides. It has opened up the world to new ideas about our cities and architecture, but it can also be used to steal information. Which brings me to the sponsor for this video. This is the first sponsor we work together with, so I'd like to thank them for helping to make The Aesthetic City a sustainable and growing effort. Surfshark is a VPN provider that lets you secure your online identity. It encrypts your personal data and keeps it protected from big companies or cybercriminals. It also allows you to change your virtual location by swapping your IP address. I find this very useful when I'm traveling to shoot video, as I can easily connect to a server back in Holland to watch some Dutch geofence content, for example. But there are over 3,200 servers in 100 countries you can connect with. But more importantly, I find it helpful to keep myself safe when I'm connected to the public Wi-Fi in a hotel or some cafe, which is quite a lot these days. Those unprotected Wi-Fis can be a gold mine to hackers. By securing my information and masking my IP address, it's harder to be hacked. We wouldn't want someone to turn my account into a brutalism fan page. Use code AESTHETIC to get an extra 3 months for free. And remember, it's risk-free as you have a 30-day money-back guarantee anyway. Click the link in the description. Now let's continue. Architecture is also an art, of course. In the world of art, originality is also very important. But why? Well, there's a long history to explain this. Before the 18th century, artists were mostly seen as skilled craftsmen, who were commissioned by wealthy patrons. Imitating the works of older masters wasn't seen as problematic. Originality was even frowned upon. Shakespeare stated he avoided unnecessary invention, and many artists eagerly borrowed from older artworks. But during the Romantic era there was a shift. Art became separated from the crafts, and artists were no longer seen as craftsmen, but as something new. The artist genius was born. These were special, visionary individuals who could express deep emotional and universal truths. Their work was a result of their imagination, emotion and intuition, not only skill or learning. Art itself also changed. It became something autonomous, to be visited in a museum where people could observe it and contemplate it. Before that time, artworks used to be part of a larger whole, like a church or an interior. Architects also became artists under this new definition. Before, they were mostly seen as very skilled stonemasons, carpenters or contractors who could draw buildings. And some originality was expected from these artists. But soon, just a bit of originality wouldn't be enough anymore. Fast forward to the birth of the modern age. With the upheaval of the Industrial Revolution and World War I, there was suddenly an opening for even more radical change. New technologies offered new possibilities to make new types of architecture. It's around that time that modernism was born. Modernism did away with the past. It wanted to offer a new, exciting way forward, which meant that they believed that newer is better and what has been done is not worthwhile. You can probably already see that this made originality and novelty virtually mandatory, especially in universities. Under this motto, traditional design principles were thrown out and replaced by new ones, fueled by new technology like reinforced concrete. The aesthetic of this new type of architecture was inspired by the clean minimalist forms of the then very modern things like grain silos and steam cruisers. Over time, architecture also became a bit detached from outside daily reality. As it was now seen as less of a craft and more of a form of art, it became more abstract and conceptual. This is what has led to ever-crazier buildings like this and like this. Many architects lost their interest for what non-architects thought about their buildings, and often ignored the context and surroundings of their designs. After all, their buildings were autonomous works of art, which should be seen as if they existed in a vacuum. Every building was a way for them to stand out and show their brilliance. But they forgot one very important thing. Architecture is a public art. It isn't hidden away in a museum or art gallery, but it's right there, in the street. And people have to work in them, live in them and live with them. The city doesn't magically evaporate when people look at a building. Instead, when a radically different building is inserted in the city, the differences between it and the city become super obvious, sometimes even painful. So how do we deal with this problem? Buildings are a public art, but architects, as artists, want freedom to design. So what do we do? Are some limitations needed? In society, we have set rules to make sure it functions. For example, we forbid people to kill each other. Not being able to kill is, in essence, a limitation of freedom, but obviously it leads to greater freedom for all, like being able to travel around without getting killed. The same goes for architecture. The freedom of the architect is not the only thing to take into consideration when you build, because the city is for everyone and we live in a democratic society. So we must also think of other factors, like the existing architectural fabric, what people like to see in their streets and skyline. Inconsiderate buildings can really hurt the city around them and are often divisive and unpopular. Although it's not always the architect that decides where a building will arise and how big it will be, it is the architect who decides what the building looks like and if it tries to blend in or stand out. We should therefore be okay with setting some rules, which might limit the originality of architects somewhat. But as the saying goes, creativity thrives under limitation, and the end result can be more harmonious, pleasant and widely enjoyed. Furthermore, we need to realize that not all original ideas are useful or helpful. Take the example of the circular houses in Den Bosch, in the Netherlands. Tom Scott made a beautiful video about it on his channel, which I highly advise you watch. A series of spherical shaped homes were built, but as a resident tells Tom in the video, the homes have some fundamental flaws. The windows leak, the white outer surface becomes green over time, there is limited storage space inside because of the curved walls, maintenance costs are sky high, and worst of all, some people experience claustrophobia when entering them. It was a super innovative idea, but it was not functional, not cost effective, and because of that, doesn't stand the test of time. They do look cool and futuristic, but if we really want to build sustainably and affordably, these kinds of original ideas are not it. One other problematic aspect of originality is its effect on education. Humans learn by imitating. It is how we learn to speak, for example. But the same goes for many other things, like art. In modern architecture education, architects are supposed to be original inventors from day one. This is challenging for many, and it leads to plenty of students feeling lost. Of course, students learn the basics of how to construct a building and can, ironically, take inspiration from modernist masterworks. But the emphasis is on being original and experimental. But this is the world upside down. Why not learn from the best, get the basics right and become well-rounded and self-confident first? There's enough time in the rest of their career to be inventive if they want to. Many believe that only modernist architecture can be truly original, but is that really true? Most modernist office buildings look very similar. The same goes for much of modernist housing. Even the supposedly more unique buildings, which aim to be more original, show a lot of repeated ideas. Whether it's barcode windows, prismatic shapes, or whimsically arranged architectural features, there seems to be a set of ideas modernist architects take their inspiration from. On the page Someone Has Built It Before, architect Eli Imbar shows an almost endless list of contemporary buildings and their sources of inspiration, showing how far this borrowing of ideas goes, even for seemingly innovative designs. So perhaps there's less originality in modernism than we think. Personally, I feel modernism's obsession with novelty and its need to always go on to the next new thing shows a hollowness, a lack of meaning and depth, and many buildings just look like a flashy marketing stunt. Perhaps it shows the state of the building industry, which is organized to churn out standardized buildings as fast and cheaply as possible. And the architect's role is to put it in a funky shape or give it a funny facade to make it at least a bit interesting. And that's a real shame, because there is unlimited potential to create truly original buildings that do have more redeeming qualities. I'll describe a way at the end of this video. A final point I want to make about originality is its relation to fame. As I mentioned earlier, the architect was elevated to the artist genius in the Romance period. One way to set yourself apart as an artist is by creating a novel, original idea for a building, which can lead to worldwide fame. This incentive has caused a race to be ever more innovative. The most famous architects have become known as star architects or starchitects. But architects create public art that everybody has to live with, so they have a responsibility towards society. So instead of architects being self-serving by going after originality and thus fame, at the cost of the urban context, public opinion, etc., they could be serving to the public. They could design to make people happy and healthy. They can still show their skill, but by enriching cities with buildings that are truly suited to their environment. Because capturing the spirit of a city, like Utrecht or Melbourne for example, in a building isn't always easy. We are drawn to novelty and we prize original ideas. Sometimes that's the right thing to do, but as we've discussed in this video, originality for originality's sake or blind experimentation can result in disaster. We need to remember why we built, to serve society. And if we ever want to become a sustainable civilization, we need to build things that will stand the test of time, and not gimmicks that get broken down after 50 years. We are blessed with over 3,000 years of building traditions that have left us some of the best solutions to a wide array of problems. In my video, Building Like We Used To, I talk about these. We need to be aware that these solutions already exist and really study them, because why not learn from the best? All in all, originality isn't the enemy, but it must serve a purpose, other than that of achieving fame, or for just trying something new for the sake of it. One solution: let's not be afraid of building traditions. We stand on the shoulders of giants, so let's be grateful for what has been invented for us with great pain and use it to create exciting, beautiful new things. That way we can continue to innovate, but also make sure that our cities don't descend into chaos, but become more livable, beautiful and sustainable. Thank you for watching, but don't click away yet. If you want to see a project that recombined elements from Guatemalan culture in a new, original way, check out the next video. Let me know in the comments what you think about originality in architecture. Don't forget to like, subscribe and to tick the notification bell. Also, check out the Surfshark promotion link in the description. Finally, a big thank you to my patrons. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.